The orchard stood in silence at the edge of the dense forest, a sanctuary nestled in the quiet expanse of a rural valley. Beneath the towering oak trees, where sunlight filtered through the leaves, stood a young Pyrenean mountain dog named Luna. Her thick coat a mix of whites and soft grays, her large frame barely fitting in with the delicate branches of the fruit trees. She was the orchard's guardian, chosen long before she was even born to protect the land, the sheep, and most importantly, the fragile, tender lambs that wandered beneath the shade of the trees. The orchard had always been peaceful. It was a refuge where animals roamed freely, protected from the outside world. The scent of apples ripening in the warm summer sun mingled with the earthy smell of the forest that loomed just beyond. The quiet was something that Luna had come to cherish, but over the past few days, something had changed. The birds no longer sang their usual melodies in the early morning, and the rabbits, normally curious, had become unusually cautious, darting into the underbrush at the slightest movement. On this evening, as dusk began to fall, Luna stood watch at the orchard's edge. Her keen ears picked up the soft rustling of leaves, a sound that felt too deliberate, too purposeful. She turned her head sharply, her eyes narrowing as the wind carried the scent of something unfamiliar. Her heart pounded in her chest as she shifted her weight, the soft padding of her paws making little noise on the dirt beneath. The orchard was too quiet, the air heavy with a strange tension, as if the land itself was holding its breath. A soft crunch of leaves to her right caught her attention, followed by the faintest movement of a shadow passing between the trees. Luna's fur bristled, and she lowered her body instinctively, her eyes trained on the direction from which the sound had come. The evening light filtered through the trees, casting long, jagged shadows across the orchard floor. A lone deer often grazed at the outskirts of the orchard, but this was different. Something about the movement felt off, too purposeful, too intentional. Luna's instincts kicked in. She padded closer, her steps quiet but deliberate. Her nose twitched in the cool air, and she sniffed the ground, detecting something that made her hackles rise. The smell was faint, but it was unmistakable. Predator. As she neared the source, she saw it, a sleek, dark figure blending into the shadows at the far side of the orchard. A fox. But this was no ordinary fox. It moved with unnerving precision, its sleek coat blending perfectly with the evening gloom. Luna's breath quickened. Foxes weren't uncommon here, but this one was larger, with eyes that gleamed unnaturally bright as it prowled near the small flock of sheep that grazed by the orchard's edge. The tension in Luna's body coiled tighter. She knew the role she had to play. She was the protector, the guardian, and she would not let harm come to the creatures under her watch. Yet something about the fox's presence felt wrong. It wasn't the usual skittish behavior she had seen in others of its kind. This fox moved with intent, creeping closer to the vulnerable lambs, its eyes fixed on them as if they were its prey. Luna crept closer, staying low to the ground. Her heart hammered in her chest as she silently calculated her next move. As she closed the distance, she noticed the way the fox seemed to ignore the other animals in the orchard, all of whom had gone eerily still. The birds were silent, the wind had calmed, and the rustling of leaves had stopped. Even the trees stood motionless, as if waiting. A sudden rustle in the bushes to her left made Luna snap her attention away from the fox for just a moment. A movement, too quick, too unnatural. Her eyes widened as she saw another shadow darting out from the underbrush, this time an even larger figure, with long limbs and a slinking movement that mirrored the fox's stealthy grace. Her instinct screamed in alarm as the new figure approached the fox, its glowing eyes reflecting the dimming light. It was a wolf. Luna froze in place, her muscles tensing. The fox wasn't the only threat. The wolf, moving with eerie calm, stepped closer to the fox, both predators now in the same space. and Luna realized with a shock that they weren't enemies. They were allies. Together they moved with synchronized precision, a deadly partnership in the stillness of the orchard. Luna's heart skipped a beat. She understood now. The fox wasn't hunting for itself. It was luring the lambs into the path of the wolf, working in tandem to trap and isolate the weakest of the flock. The lambs, unaware of the danger, wandered closer to the predator's hidden lair. The world around Luna seemed to slow, the silence almost suffocating. Her protective instincts roared to life. She couldn't allow this. The land, the animals, and everything she had been trained to protect, she could not let it fall into the hands of these predators. Luna surged forward, her powerful legs propelling her through the grass, her body low and poised for the chase. The fox darted back, its red coat flashing like a streak of flame, while the wolf let out a low growl, sensing Luna's movement. The orchard, once a serene place of peace, now pulsed with tension, as if the very earth beneath their paws were holding its breath. Luna's eyes locked onto the fox and she gave chase, her body a blur of white fur against the darkened earth. The fox zigzagged between the trees, trying to outwit her, but Luna's agility and determination outmatched its swift movements. She gained ground, her jaws snapping inches from the fox's tail. In a swift, calculated movement, Luna lunged, catching the fox by the scruff of its neck. The predator yelped in surprise as Luna threw it to the ground, pinning it with her massive paws. The wolf, sensing its partner's failure, let out a fierce howl, its teeth bared, ready to strike. But Luna wasn't finished. With a sudden burst of strength, Luna released the fox, charging straight for the wolf. The wolf hesitated, its eyes flicking between the trapped fox and the approaching guardian. It snarled, its hackles raised, but Luna's presence was overwhelming, a force of nature honed by her training and the deep bond she shared with the land she protected. For a moment there was a standoff, Luna, the towering guardian, and the two predators, each weighing their next move. But Luna's resolve held firm. Her eyes never left the wolf's, her body tense, ready to spring into action at any moment. After what felt like an eternity, the wolf growled low in its throat and backed away, its hackles still raised, but it understood the challenge was too great. With one last look at the fox, the wolf melted into the shadows, disappearing into the forest. The fox, battered and humbled, slunk away into the underbrush, knowing it had failed. The orchard was still again. Luna stood, her breathing heavy but controlled. The lambs, unaware of the danger they had just narrowly escaped, continued to graze, oblivious to the tension that had gripped the land. She glanced up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to twinkle, and for a moment there was peace. But Luna knew that the quiet would not last forever. The predators would return, and she would be there, ready to defend. The orchard had a new guardian now, one who understood that peace was hard-won and the quiet moments were fleeting. But she would stand, vigilant and unyielding, her heart bound to the land she swore to protect. As the last of the evening light faded from the sky, Luna slowly made her way back to the center of the orchard, where a small grove of apple trees stood like sentinels. The night was closing in, and the familiar chorus of crickets began to hum through the air. But Luna remained on high alert, her eyes scanning every corner of the orchard. Her ears twitched at every rustle of the wind, every snap of a twig, and every distant movement. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The fox and the wolf had been more than mere predators. They were part of something larger, something far more unsettling. Luna's instincts told her this was no coincidence. The orchard, once a peaceful place of refuge, had now become a battleground, and the scent of danger was still fresh in the air. Luna approached the flock of sheep, who were gathered near the farthest corner of the orchard, their wool glistening in the fading moonlight. She stayed at a distance, her presence enough to assure them of her protection. She padded slowly, her steps light yet firm, her eyes never leaving the shadows where the forest began. For hours, Luna stood watch, her posture rigid, her body tuned to the quiet rhythm of the land. The sounds of the forest were distant now, as if the creatures within had gone into hiding, waiting for the storm to pass. But Luna knew it wouldn't pass. Not this time. Her instincts told her that the predators were still nearby, lurking in the dark, waiting for the right moment to strike again. She could feel it in her bones. An undercurrent of tension, a presence just beyond the trees, watching, waiting. The orchard was no longer just a sanctuary for the innocent. It had become a prize, a piece of land that would be fought for. And Luna, the orchard's guardian, would protect it at all costs. As the moon rose higher in the sky, casting an ethereal glow over the landscape, Luna's thoughts were interrupted by a sound, low, almost imperceptible, but there nonetheless. A soft scraping of claws against bark. Her heart skipped a beat. From the shadows emerged a figure, a silhouette almost indistinguishable from the darkness itself. Luna's fur bristled once more. This time, it wasn't a fox or a wolf. This creature was larger, more imposing, with a shape that seemed to shift in the moonlight, as if the shadows themselves had taken form. It moved like the wind, quiet and fast, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. A predator like no other. Luna's breath caught in her chest as the creature drew nearer, its movements smooth, deliberate, and unnervingly silent. Her body tensed, ready for action. She could feel the weight of the air pressing down on her, the very soil beneath her paws vibrating with the weight of the creature's presence. Without warning, the creature sprang, its eyes locked onto Luna's with an almost calculating intensity. She barely had time to react, but her reflexes, honed over years of guarding the orchard, kicked in. She leaped sideways, narrowly avoiding the creature's razor-sharp claws, and landed hard on the ground. The creature paused for just a moment, its gaze never leaving her. Luna's heart pounded, and she quickly pushed herself to her feet, ready for another strike. But then, in a moment of eerie stillness, the creature did something that made her freeze. It tilted its head, as if studying her, before it slowly, almost reluctantly, backed away. Its movements were unnervingly calm, as if it had no intention of engaging in battle, only watching. Luna's instincts told her that it was not afraid of her, nor was it retreating out of caution. It was testing her. She watched closely as the creature, a shadow that seemed to move between the trees like a dark breeze, disappeared into the night. The air remained heavy, thick with an unspoken promise that this was far from over. Luna, still standing at the edge of the orchard, felt the full weight of her responsibility. The orchard, her charge, was under siege. Not just from the foxes or the wolves, but from something much darker, much more dangerous. But Luna was not afraid. Her loyalty to the land and the creatures that called it home was unwavering. She had witnessed the orchard's transformation, from a place of peace to a battleground, but she would not abandon it. No matter what forces were at work, she would stand her ground. The orchard had a guardian, and Luna was more than ready to face whatever came next. The dawn was still hours away, but Luna remained alert, her eyes scanning the horizon, her senses straining to pick up even the faintest movement. The orchard was her domain, and she would protect it, no matter the cost. The land and its creatures depended on her, and she would not falter. Somewhere deep in the heart of the forest, a pair of glowing eyes watched her, waiting for the right moment. And Luna, the orchard's silent sentinel, waited as well. The hours crept on, the moonlight now sharp and cold, casting long jagged shadows across the orchard. The stillness in the air grew thicker, almost suffocating, Luna stood firm, her body coiled like a spring, every muscle ready to move in an instant. She was no longer just a protector, she had become a guardian, an embodiment of the orchard itself, a silent vow to defend it against whatever threats lurked beyond the trees. The first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, faint streaks of gold and pink pushing against the darkness, but Luna knew that the real battle was not in the rising sun. It was in the shadows, where the creature had retreated to, waiting patiently, its eyes never leaving her. As the forest slowly awakened with the sounds of morning birds and rustling leaves, Luna remained motionless, her ears twitching, listening for any movement. A cold wind swept through the orchard, causing the leaves to rustle and the branches to creak, as if the trees themselves were whispering secrets. Luna's sharp eyes caught every flicker of movement, every shadow that crossed her path. Then, just as the sun breached the horizon, she saw it again. The creature, no longer a mere silhouette but now more defined in the early light, emerged from the woods. It was massive, with fur that blended seamlessly into the underbrush and eyes that glowed like embers. Its form was not that of a wolf or a fox, but something far older, something primal. It stood on all fours, but its posture was unnatural, as if it could rise at any moment to tower over her. Luna's breath hitched. This was no ordinary predator. It was an ancient guardian of the forest, a creature that existed in the stories and myths passed down by those who lived in the shadows of the woods, feared and revered for its power and cunning. The creature paused at the edge of the orchard, its gaze locking with Luna's. She stood firm, her body tense, every instinct telling her to run, but her loyalty to the orchard kept her grounded. It was a test, a challenge. This was not a fight of mere survival. It was a battle for the soul of the land itself. Without warning, the creature lunged forward, its movements swift and calculated, but Luna was ready. She darted to the side, narrowly avoiding its teeth as it snapped at her. She didn't have time to think. Her survival instincts kicked in, and she fought back with everything she had. The orchard became a blur of movement as Luna and the creature clashed. Every strike Luna made was met with a counter from the creature, each one more powerful than the last. Luna was quick, agile, and relentless, but the creature was ancient and unyielding. It seemed to know every move before she made it, its glowing eyes tracking her every motion. As the battle raged on, Luna's thoughts began to clear. The creature was not just a threat. It was a manifestation of the land itself, a force of nature that had been awakened by something more powerful than the foxes or wolves. The orchard was in danger, but it was not just the animals that were under threat. It was the very heart of the land, the sacred balance that had kept the orchard safe for generations. Luna's fight was no longer just physical. She realized that to protect the orchard, she would have to do more than defeat the creature. She would need to understand it, to face whatever had caused it to rise from the depths of the forest. With a sudden, desperate surge of strength, Luna broke free from the creature's grasp and backed away. Her body ached and her breathing was ragged, but she did not stop. She needed to regroup, to think. She watched the creature closely as it circled her, its movement slow, deliberate. It was waiting for her to make a mistake. But Luna was no longer the same dog she had been when the sun had set. She had learned something in the struggle. This creature was not an enemy to be defeated by force alone. It was a guardian, like her, and it would only yield to something more than strength. The orchard had always been a sanctuary, a place where balance and peace reigned. It wasn't about dominance or victory, it was about harmony. Luna realized then that the only way to protect the orchard was to restore that balance, to offer the creature what it sought. Not battle, but understanding. She wasn't just fighting for survival. She was fighting for the orchard itself. The creature paused again, its eyes flickering between Luna and the orchard. It wasn't just watching her anymore. It was waiting for something. Luna, breathless and battered, understood. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, slowly, carefully. The tension in the air was thick, the world holding its breath. She bowed her head low, her tail lowered in submission. She wasn't weak, she was offering respect, offering peace. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, the creature did something unexpected. It stepped closer, its massive form looming over her, but it didn't attack. Instead, it sniffed the air, its eyes never leaving hers. And for the first time, Luna sensed something different, something softer. The creature's glowing eyes dimmed, and with one last lingering look, it turned and retreated into the forest, disappearing into the shadows from which it had come. Luna stood alone in the orchard, her body still, her heart pounding in her chest. The danger had passed, but the mystery remained. The orchard had been spared, for now, but Luna knew that this was not the end. The land had called upon its guardian, and in the end, it had been Luna's connection to the orchard, her understanding of its soul, that had saved it. As the first rays of the sun bathed the orchard in golden light, Luna looked around her, at the trees, the grass, the animals she had sworn to protect. The battle was over, but the land was forever changed. And she, the orchard's true guardian, would always stand watch, ready to defend it against whatever darkness might come next. For the orchard was more than a place. It was alive, and it would always call to those who had the heart to protect it. And Luna, the silent sentinel, would never falter.